A Brief History of Humming, The Hum in Contemporary Voice Practice, a lecture demonstration given at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama on July 3, 2013. My aim in this talk is to place an idea before you that's arisen out of my voice practice. Over the past 25 years, I've been examining, amongst many other matters, various questions about the possibilities for self-realization as a result of vocal exercise sequences aimed to enhance an individual's perception of sound in the body. This perceptual work within the Spoken Voice Studio represents part of the unique body of work of spoken voice study that takes place in the actor training sector in British higher education. The heightened sensory perception inculcated in these processes has led me to consider how a new theory about voice in relation to self-identity and pre-linguistic sound can emerge out of this work and influence future voice practice in the studio. Using this idea as an introduction to a deeper and longer process, I'd just like to examine the art of humming, as it is an early pre-linguistic act that pertains to sound making in relation to self-knowledge. In particular, I'd like us to imagine how this functioned in relation to the geographic and geological features within which the early humans found themselves at a mythic point in the Ice Age over 30,000 years ago. The first feature of consideration is with the cave. In the prehistoric cave, there were possibilities not just for creative expression in the cave or on the cave's surfaces, and some theorists think that our capacity for written language was as much formed out of these as it was out of orality. But there were also acoustic properties in the cave that allowed sound to be returned to the maker. This echo reinforced the sense of an individual's beingness in time and space and developed vocal skills by allowing the bouncing acoustics of the cave to encourage them as effective sound makers. The most effective sound for beginning to awaken both the sensation of sound and the directional capacity of sound waves is a light, free and forwards hum. Why the hum? There's a simple twofold reason. One, because it is a pre-linguistic point of sound that stands apart from any position in the structured meanings of language. And I'm particularly interested in prizing sound away from the dominant hierarchies of syntax. And two, it's been used countless times as a means of investigating the voice in a training context, and I want to know more about why this is so. Our starting point then, as already mentioned, is a mythic prehistoric moment, prior to the arrival of any signifier, in which the natural environment, mapped alongside the distinctive structures of the human vocal tract, served to provide a backdrop for considerations of the impact of the hum on early sound making. Slide 2. Let us begin by thinking about how the hum forms in the vocal tract. The following poem, A Brief History of Humming, gives us some idea. A Brief History of Humming. It begins with a vibrality, struck across the roof of your being in a thrum of bone song, composed in a string of minuscule skull rooms and travels along filigree tubes and pocked eye caverns until it drops into the column at the core, where every interlocking spine jag carries a tune from the drone on the palate, toward a reed-tipped finale, where every author calls to author. This is the beginning of the humming season, a confirmation of you to yourself, even when there was no one else to be found. It begins with a vibrality, struck across the roof of your being in a thrum of bone song, composed in a string of minuscule skull rooms, and travels along filigree tubes and pocked eye caverns until it drops into the column at the core, where every interlocking spine jag carries a tune from the drone on the palate, toward a reed-lipped finale, where author calls to author. This is the beginning of the humming season, a confirmation of you to yourself, even when there is no one else to be found. The importance of the hum in awakening the individual to the movement of sound within their own frame is the key to a formational sense of ownership of the act of communication. Our next consideration takes us from the possibilities of the movement of sound within the human mouth as it is cave-like to the movement of sound within the literal geological cave. Voice training operates by alluding both to the metaphors as well as to the facts of vocal anatomy, and this is where situating a place in the mind and body in which pure sound can be generated, freed from the expectations that are generated by language, can be productive enough to generate transformations of the voice. The mouth is often referred to as a cave in voice practice. The hard palate, roof, is a fixed point and provides the perfect foil for the flexible and intricately muscular tongue. It offers the perfect chamber within which to place sound so that it conducts efficiently along the bony frame of the face and can be amplified by activating the pockets of air in the hollows of the skull. I would briefly like to consider the idea of humming as a phenomenon of sound making that's pre-linguistic in nature and thus outside the fixed order of language itself. It's given us some of our earliest sensations of ourselves as capable of sound making in an experience that goes all the way down to the tissue and bone. Movement theorist Patricia Bardy presents an exercise called self-touch, in which a guided contact with a facial mask is offered. The tactile results of this exercise, as perceived through the fingertips, offer up to touch the structures of vocal anatomy that are capable of colouring and amplifying sound. This type of exercise makes its appearance in both movement and voice training, and can be formational to an individual's understanding of the human frame as a place of sound generation. It also removes the weight of the responsibility from individual intention to an individual's awareness. This in turn points toward the realm of the perception of touch as holding a key in an individual's ability to transform their vocality. David Carey and Rebecca Carey have an exercise for the hum under the resonance and range section in their vocal arts workbook, and suggest that it can play an important part in the art of connecting to one's vocal capacity. They say, "This is a lengthy sequence, but it really pays dividends in your connection to resonance if you work through it slowly." They situate the exercise by asking participants to imagine a mouth in 4 parts of the body: belly, chest on the front, and lumbar and shoulder blades on the back, in order to get the full dimensionality of sound in the body. A full experience of this exercise allows the metaphor of the mouth as cave to succeed at the level of the transformation of sound in the individual. The cave. I'd like to consider the contribution made by the perception of sound in the formation of human subjectivity before the countersigns of power and order have been indicated by the structures of language. It can also be supposed that the amplifying acoustics found in the early place of shelter in the cave may have contributed to the eventual discovery of an effortless way of producing a clear hum that could return a signal changed by the cave itself. We can also imagine that the stones, the rocks, and other geological features of the early human landscape will have contributed to the way in which sounds were shaped and produced. Self-affirmation in sound. In the cave we learnt how to vibrate effectively, both to get the return of sound back from the cave and to affirm our own presence, self to self, in a different relationship to self-knowledge than that which is returned to us through the visual cortex. Philosopher Adriano Cavarero talks at length about the metaphysical predilection for vision in her book For More Than One Voice. The visual metaphor, which characterises the truth of the metaphysical traditions, has its roots in a privileging of vision that is shared by Greek culture as a whole. In this model, sight is presumed to be a more stable witness than the ear that places what it perceives as event and not as an object. one hears barking and not a dog, Cavarero says. I argue here that when we hear barking, we can also hear a specific dog, if we listen carefully. Vibration on the lips. In order for the sound to carry effortlessly, the individual has found ways to vibrate the breath in the most effective manner. The journey of sound through an unblocked passageway to the lips themselves, though, has seen many founder on the way. Leading international voice practitioner Kristen Linklater has devised her own remedy for this by drawing attention to a place of sound vibration in relation to a free and relaxed area at the back of the tongue. It's possible to imagine that this would have been mirrored by those in their early states of the human quest for communicative ease, since it's certain that nobody likes it to hurt in the vocal tract when they communicate. I draw in the following passage from my own journal following an experience of a workshop given by Linklater in London, April 2013. Then we spent a long and wonderful time in defining what humming is, with Kristen offering differing examples of humming in which other parts of the articulating surfaces are engaged, but utilising the same overall intention of keeping the oral cavity open and placing the hum effortlessly onto lightly closed lips. She also suggested that you need to start with thought that emits the free sigh of relief and then just close the lips and open them again to allow what happens to just happen. It was a pleasure to really focus this work on the lip humming art, as opposed to back of the tongue humming, as it showed how many ways there are to vibrate the moving current of sound, but only one truly effective way to get the sound vibrating into the cavities of the mask, and then all around the skull, with head release and down the spine and around the full body. We took this humming down the spine, using gravity and anti-gravity to spring back up, feeling the drop from the head, the torso and the sacrum, and springing back up with the sound bouncing out. One more tip on humming lightly came from Kristen, as she suggested that we sigh very lightly down the nose, as if gently blowing it, and then sending it to the lips immediately. This gave a light and easeful onset to the hum, without being tempted to drive it too hard, and it brought the vibrations forward in a very conscious, enlivened way. The burial chambers of the Neolithic period. The niches, crevices and vaults provide useful metaphors for the capacity of the body to resonate with sound, and the ways in which this will have affected the nature of human vocalization. The prehistoric circular mound at Newgrange, County Meath, Ireland, is one such example, with its stone passageways and chambers inside, built around 3200 BC. In the following poem we can consider how the effects of managing these sounds might have affected the status of being human. The bone chisel grooves threefold spirals on the dawn-lit Boyne stone. A woman sings to its face, practising the art of marking eternity. The river curls in to listen, its soft belly cradling her call. The song reliably returns, something she has come to know. When one stone sings to another stone, she will always be heard, and with this song she will make them believe it is sung by the dead. Giving voice to the stone gives her power of life over death, and the beginning of her priesthood. Kristen Linklater, in her famous vocal progression, has spoken at length about the hum as part of her idea about the touch of sound on the breath. She suggests that one should sigh very lightly down the nose, as if gently blowing it, and then send it to the lips immediately to give a light and easeful onset to the hum without being tempted to drive it too hard. This can in time bring the vibrations forward in a very conscious and enlivened way. I suggest that we do it now, producing a hum that is light, structurally informed by our own physicality, and enlivened by the metaphor of the cave of sound, to provide a fruitful prehistoric mythic moment of heightened perception about the voice in the body.